You know those sidekick characters that are in basically every movie or TV show? Sometimes they're the minions of the villains, sometimes friends of the heroes, sometimes more background characters, but they pretty much always serve the same purpose: comedy. They're not very smart most of the time, they're accident prone, or generally have really bad luck. Well, what if those two characters decided that they wanted to be in the spotlight for once instead of the background and went off to have their own adventure? You'd probably get something a bit like Road to El Dorado. In this gorgeously animated movie, we're introduced to Miguel, the wide-eyed optimist who wants adventure in the great wide somewhere, and Tulio, the more cautious member of the duo who seems to mostly want to keep their heads down, but considering the dramatic sword fight act they pull in the first 10 minutes of the movie, he has a bit of the showman in him too. When we meet them, they're scamming a bunch of sailors out of their money by challenging them to dice games while using loaded dice. For those unfamiliar with gambling, loaded dice are weighted, so they will always land on favorable numbers. Obviously on a winning streak, thanks to their cheating, they manage to swindle the sailors out of all of their money. But one of them wants one more roll, and his bet is a map to what he calls the wonders of the New World. Tulio couldn't care less, but Miguel is all about destiny and adventure, so he's immediately on board and begs Tulio. After all, they can't lose with their loaded dice, so what's the risk? Right as Tulio is about to throw, however, the sailor stops him, saying that they will be using his dice instead. This of course upsets Tulio, but he can't back out now without it being painfully obvious that they were cheating the whole time. He takes a shot and wins, but his own dice fall out of his shirt, and the sailors realize they were loaded. Tulio and Miguel make a big scene of accusing each other of being cheaters and sword fighting over it, distracting everyone and getting away with the map, though I think they leave behind the majority of the gold they've scammed the men out of. They go through a big chase scene involving a bull and wind up on a ship that leaves the dock headed for, where else? The New World. They end up being discovered and put in the brig, finding out that this ship belongs to none other than Cortez himself. For those unfamiliar, Hernan Cortez was a Spanish conquistador responsible for leading an expedition that caused the fall of the Aztec Empire and brought large portions of what is now mainland Mexico under Spanish rule. He's a big part of the reason that Spanish is the language spoken in Mexico for the most part, not any of the native languages like Nahuatl or Chontal Maya. As with most colonists and conquerors, he didn't get what he wanted by asking nicely. And his cruelty was on display here, as he orders Miguel and Tulio to be flogged, which means one heck of a beating, and then intends for them to be enslaved on sugar plantations for the rest of their lives. Tulio comes up with a plan to steal one of the rowboats and escape, but it's Miguel who manages to get Cortez's horse, Altivo, to bring them the key so they can get on deck by promising him an apple. Through some physics hijinks, the apple ends up in the water, quickly followed by the horse. Miguel is a softie and risks his life to save Altivo, with him and Tulio losing a lot of their supplies in the process. As it turns out, getting back to Spain after being at sea for so long isn't exactly easy in a rowboat with no way of telling direction and almost no provisions left. And they quickly get lost, going in circles, running out of food, and thinking that they're going to die. Just as they've given up, they find themselves on land. Seeing human bones with swords stuck in them, they're ready to jump back into the boat and leave. But Miguel recognizes some landmarks from the map that he still has somehow, and insists that they follow it to El Dorado to get the gold so they can go back to Spain as rich men. Tulio isn't on board at first, but eventually greed wins him over and they head into the jungle, following the map while an upbeat song plays. At the end of the map, they find an enormous rock with a carving of two men on what appears to be horseback, though it's unlikely to actually be a horse, and more likely to be some mythical creature because, contrary to popular belief, horses are not native to the American continent. There is no such thing as a wild American horse, not even the Mustangs. They're not wild. They're feral, the descendants of horses that escaped or were released by the Spanish and other European colonists that brought them over on their ships, with some, like the Chicontec Island ponies, escaping from ships that sank. At least that's how the story goes. Horses are not native to America, though there was once a species that resembled modern-day horses way, way, way back, but they went extinct about 11,000 years ago due to climate change, though hunting by early humans may have also been possible, and their range was more to the north, so it's unlikely that the Aztec, Mayan, or Nahua people ever encountered them. Sorry, fans of Spirit and other wild western horse stories, those aren't wild animals. They're roughly the same as feral cats or street dogs, and are as an environmentally destructive invasive species, just like feral hogs. I love horses, but part of loving nature in general is being able to recognize that even if I love something, recognizing the harm it's doing is important and needs to be corrected for the benefit of the overall environment. Anyway, back on topic. Tulio is angry and thinks that this rock is all there is as far as treasure, not really thinking about the fact that someone had to have carved it. They start looking for a path out of the jungle, hoping to find something resembling civilization, when someone runs out. A young woman holding a wrapped object. She runs into Altivo, getting knocked to the ground, being chased by a group of men who are shocked and confused to see the two men on the horse. The young woman tries to toss the object she's holding to Tulio, who just tosses it back. It goes back and forth a bit until Tulio gets smacked in the head by it, attempting to talk to the guards, the leader of whom makes them come along with them and the girl, riding boats through a stone tunnel to reveal El Dorado, the city of gold that they were looking for, and it is spectacular. The native people are all shocked to see these two men and the horse, and we quickly find out why. The city's head priest declares them gods that were destined to come and bring about a new age, the age of the jaguar. Right away, you can tell this priest is of the fire and brimstone variety. The kind who would probably be really into revelations if he was a Christian priest. The kind who is very into the punishments of the Old Testament, and not so much into the lessons of kindness and forgiveness in the New Testament. The city's chief, however, is obviously a much gentler, softer kind of person, soft-spoken and wanting what's best for his people. The priest wants to punish the young woman, Chell, stating that she stole gold from the temple. She argues that she wasn't stealing, that the gods sent her a vision to bring them tribute from the temple to guide them to the city. She clearly knows they aren't actually gods, even though everyone else falls for the ruse, with Miguel running his mouth a little too much and threatening a show of their power, which the priest is all too eager for. Thankfully, a volcano nearby lends a helping near eruption to convince everyone of their power, and they're able to go to the temple where they are treated to lavish meals, clothes, and piles upon piles of gold. Chell makes a deal to help them and continue the ruse, as long as they let her come with them when they leave, and she gets a share of the gold. We never do find out why she wants to leave the city. There's no friends or family or anyone related to her that we seem to meet, and everyone seems to be living pretty good lives, so where her struggle is coming from is uncertain. Why is she even a thief? It seems like everyone has their needs provided for, and anyone in the city would have instantly recognized the stolen gold from the temple, so she wouldn't be able to sell it. Where was she going when she was out in the jungle? There's never mention of any nearby cities or anywhere that she could have gone. They agree to let her help them out since they don't know the customs and all of the city and don't want to get caught and executed, playing along with the whole being gods thing in another banger of a song. Early in the morning, the priest wants to set up a sacrifice, which they quickly stop, instead agreeing to the chief's offerings of gold. This is where we get a more clear idea of the priest's bloodthirsty nature. He doesn't want just power. He wants to spill blood. Basically, every chance he gets to try and offer up people as sacrifices, he tries to do. Doing the same after a game where the boys again cheat to win with the help of an armadillo. At this point, Miguel is sick of it, and announces to everyone that there will be no sacrifices, ever, and sends the priest away. However, the priest notices that Miguel got hit on the head, giving him a scratch above his eyebrow. One that bleeds, something that gods don't do. The priest goes to the temple to mix up a potion of some kind, sacrificing his helper to it and taking control of a massive stone jaguar he uses to attack the city. Miguel and Tulio, meanwhile, are starting to have doubts about their situation. Tulio and Chell are clearly falling for each other, driving a wedge into the friendship that Miguel and Tulio have, which, in the original writing, was more than a friendship. And Miguel is falling in love with the city and its people and starting to think that he doesn't want to leave at all. This culminates in the priest bringing the stone jaguar to attack, just as Miguel is telling Tulio he doesn't want to leave. The two of them pulling the same trick as before with the sailors, pretending to fight each other to get the priest's guard down, and managing to get him and the stone jaguar to fall into the big whirlpool that, rather than killing him, ends up just washing him up outside, where the priest runs into Cortez, who he thinks is the real god he's been waiting for, far more warlike and bloodthirsty than the two false ones. Cortez sees his gold earrings and demands to know where he got it, with the priest eager to lead them to the city and cause bloodshed. As it turns out, the trick fight wasn't as much of a trick this time as it was before. Miguel says that he intends to stay in the city, while Tulio wants to leave with Chell and as much gold as he can on the boat they had built for their escape back to Spain, though I question if this boat could have really carried enough supplies, along with all the gold, to get there. And I'm pretty sure these wanted criminals with posters up all over the city they lived in would have just been arrested at the dock and all of their gold would have been confiscated immediately, so they'd basically have nothing to show for any of it. Tulio is getting ready to leave when Altivo alerts him to the smoke in the distance, signs that trouble is coming. A scout rushes to the chief, telling him that there are strangers coming to the city. The chief at first is calm, saying that they could never find the entrance, it's too well hidden. But the scout reveals that the priest survived and is leading them. The chief rallies his men for battle, but Miguel says there's no way they can win that fight. Cortez and his men have guns, the men of the city only have spears and bows and very little in the way of armor. Tulio quickly starts thinking of a plan and lands on sacrificing the boat, and all the gold that's on it, to destroy pillars holding up the tunnel leading into the city, which would block it off and make it inaccessible from outside. I kinda wonder how this would work long term, with the people now trapped entirely in the city with no way of getting out to hunt or forage or get other resources, unless they eventually found or made another pathway or something, but the immediate threat is the concern right now. They're putting the plan into action, intending to use the wave made by dropping a statue into the water to get enough momentum to break the pillars, but it starts falling too fast and the sail on the boat is stuck, causing Miguel and Altivo, who were going to stay behind, to have to jump onto the boat so Miguel can pull the sail down, sacrificing his desire to stay in the city to save his friend. The plan works, with the gigantic wave pushing them through the tunnel, crashing the boat into the pillars and bringing the cavern down, barely washing the group out in one piece before Cortez, the priest, and the other conquistadors reach the area. The priest panics, seeing the way blocked off, Cortez clearly thinking that it was just a trick and moving on, having the priest dragged away with them, likely either going to be executed or enslaved. Miguel, Tulio, and Chell all mount up on Altivo, deciding to go find themselves another adventure, the movie ending on a reprise of Trail We Blaze. This movie is one of many examples of movies that simply didn't get the attention they deserved when they came out, like Treasure Planet or Atlantis, because they didn't follow the Disney princess formula that was basically the only thing really making money at the time, and got shafted as far as advertising and publicity went. It's beautifully animated, the voice acting is great, it's funny, and while there are a few quibbles here and there, like, I would have appreciated it if they kept the original writing that had Tulio and Miguel being more than friends in a slightly older audience version of it, but they toned it down to reach a wider, more kid-friendly audience, and honestly, I get why they would do that. Financially speaking, it was the safer choice. It has some great music, with only one of them being sung by the characters, and the rest being more background or montage-type musical numbers. the animation, like I already mentioned, is beautiful. And it's an example of why I really, really miss 2D animation and why I think it needs to make a comeback. Hand-drawn animation has a feel and heart to it that CG just doesn't. And the less said about AI plagiarism bot slop, the better. The friendship between Tulio and Miguel feels very genuine. They've clearly known each other a very long time and have gotten used to each other's quirks and know how to bounce off of the other's energy. Sure, they get on each other's nerves sometimes, but they're still a duo and still care about each other and want to see the other succeed in their dreams, even if it's not the same dream they have, which is summed up perfectly in this scene.
Tulio, did you ever imagine it would end like this?
The horse is a surprise.
Any regrets?
Besides dying? Yeah. I never had enough gold.
My regret, besides dying, is our greatest adventure is over before it began, and no one will even remember us.
Well, if it's any consolation, Miguel, you made my life an adventure.
And if it's any consolation, Tulio, you made my life rich.
They're clearly used to being a duo, and having Chell thrown in the mix rattles things up in a way neither of them were prepared for. Miguel was the one who had his eyes on her at first, but Tulio told him that they needed to stay away from her and not let themselves be tempted, because she was clearly a troublemaker, and could cause problems for them. Of course, that backfires when Tulio ends up falling for her instead, to a point that he's basically shoving Miguel to the side, something Miguel clearly doesn't handle very gracefully and leads to their third act breakup. I'm generally not a huge fan of poly stuff, but I could totally see the three of them working together as a romantic trio. She and Miguel have the same taste for adventure, while Tulio shares her desire for money and her more cautious, strategic way of going about things. They balance each other out as a trio pretty well. I am still curious as to why Chell wants to leave the city, though. Where did she intend to go when she was running away in the beginning? Was there another city somewhere she intended to go to, sell the gold she'd stolen, and start a new life? Or was she just running blind at that point because she was being chased? No one in the city seems to be suffering for money or food or anything, so what exactly was her problem? Was she just bored and wanted to see what else was out there? Maybe she wanted to be a scout or to explore but wasn't allowed to because she's a woman, or her family had expectations of her, or something? There's a lot of possibility there, but it's never explored, so we can only speculate. Overall, I definitely enjoyed this movie. The songs, the art style and animation, the humor which, to the best of my memory, never dipped into toilet humor even at its most childish moments, which I really appreciated. I hate toilet humor, and basically any time any media starts relying on it or making it a constant thing, I just tune out and lose any interest in it whatsoever. That was part of why I was never able to enjoy Centaur World. Just way too much toilet humor, especially with one of the main characters being based entirely around it. And I always thought it was weird and lazy that so many characters just never had names. Like, who doesn't name their horse? You've had this horse for how long and never named her? I know there's a popular song about going through the desert on a horse with no name, but I can promise you within 10 minutes of being with me, that horse would have had a name. And I don't know anyone who has had animals that weren't meant for eating that didn't name them. Even animals that were meant as food sometimes got names like Stew or whatever as a placeholder, even when you were trying to avoid getting attached. You don't just not name the important animals in your life. I mean, Miguel and Tulio knew Altivo's name and he wasn't even their horse at the beginning. If you haven't seen it, Road to El Dorado is definitely worth a watch. It's beautiful, has some fantastic music that will get stuck in your head for a week, has a lot of genuinely funny and heartfelt moments, and it's just a really gorgeous movie. If you need something to pass the time or are feeling down and need a bit of a pick-me-up, I'd highly recommend giving it a try. Thank you all for joining me. I'm hoping to be able to make 2 videos a week, with one either being a short story or a single chapter from a longer book, and the other being one of my typical reviews or trope top type videos. Scheduling is still a little inconsistent right now, and I'm working on a final for school, but hopefully I'll be able to keep up with it, and if I'm not able to get a review done each week, I should hopefully be at the very least able to do the reading video, so I'll be able to release at least 1 video a week consistently. Be safe, stay warm, and I'll see you in the next one.